Hey friends, I'm Janine.
And I'm Jill, and together we host Strength Happens Real Friends, Real Talk, Real Life.
Last episode, we realized we didn't really do a very good job introducing ourselves, and it took one of our daughters to point that out. So here we go. I'm Janine, and I'm a mom of four. My oldest is Morgan. She's 25, and she's the reason I became a full time warrior mom and advocate. She's faced more than her share of medical challenges, and walking beside her has lit a fire in me I didn't know I even had. I also have a son, Matthew, who just graduated college, and twin daughters, Katie and Shannon, who are deep in the whirlwind of college life. So, yeah, basically, I've been living in back to school mode for 2 decades straight. I'm basically the behind the scenes girl. I've been researching podcast platforms, testing editing tools, and digging into marketing, planning road trips, and always trying to convince Jill into one more 5K.
She does.
But don't let her fool you. I think she really likes it. I'm the calm one, but don't let that fool you. I fight just as fiercely, and I believe in the power of showing up even when it's hard.
And I'm Jill, and I'm the loud one. I'm the one with the frizzy curly hair, the glasses, a little dry wit, and just enough cursing to keep things honest. I'm a mom to three kiddos. My oldest, Hallie, was born with a rare chromosome deletion, and with it came a mountain of medical challenges. Unfortunately, Hallie did pass away at the age of 15. It's hard to believe that this year marks the 10-year anniversary of her passing. But she's the reason I'm a fierce medical mama. Neely, my middle kiddo, she is 21 and just graduated college. And it's hard to believe she's already heading off to grad school. And she's managing her own chronic illness that you'll hear about in later episodes. And my youngest, B, we call them B because they prefer their privacy, and I fully respect that. But let's just say that they've seen their own side of medical trauma and medical adventures, and maybe at some point I'll be able to talk about those. While Janine mentioned she is the technical one, I am probably what you would call the academic nerd of the duo. After my kids were diagnosed, I chose to go back to school and I got a PhD in rehabilitation sciences. I'm also a rehabilitation counselor. I research medical conditions and treatment options like it's my job because, well, it is. I'm the director of disability services at a local college where I share what I learn with college students and I also share it with their families. And I run a foundation with my family that now this podcast and Janine are a part of, the Hallie Grace Foundation. And we share this information with doctors. And to be honest, anyone who will listen, including you.
We started Strength Happens after years of pushing through the chaos of raising medically complex kids and realizing we were holding a lot that had nowhere to go.
So we made a space to say the hard things, to laugh when it's wildly inappropriate, to cry when it sneaks up on us, and to be honest, to share stories that we wish we had heard earlier in our journey.
So if you're a parent trying to keep it together while everything feels like it's falling apart,
or you're a medical professional wondering how to better support the families you care for.
So welcome to the conversation. You belong here. Let's get into it.
Today, we're talking about something that has been burned into both of our memories, Diagnosis Day. This one's going to be a little personal.
We'll be sharing the stories of our daughter's birth, the journey to their diagnosis, and the shift from feeling sometimes heartbroken and overwhelmed to becoming their fiercest advocate.
If you're a parent who happens to be navigating the same uncertainty, maybe medical complexities, or just trying to trust your gut, this story may be right for you. We hope it reminds you that you are not alone, that your love, your instincts are powerful beyond words. We also hope that this episode offers insight for medical professionals to better understand the emotional impact families have when navigating medical challenges for their children. And we encourage those medical professionals to think deeper and work harder to be compassionate when communicating specific difficult news when it's working with families.
Yeah, because more often than we want to remember, we have a lot of memories from that time of different diagnoses that may or may not have been true, that kind of hit hard.
And they weren't always delivered to us in, let's just say, the most positive bedside manner.
No. Or even correct.
No, absolutely. They sometimes they didn't even know what they were talking about, or
Yeah,
they've
true.
never heard of what our children had. So
Yeah.
we're gonna get into a lot of it today, and it's gonna be an adventure to say the least. I'll be honest with you, Janine, as we're talking, because today we're gonna both share our stories about our kids' first diagnosis. But this was a hard one for me to prepare for.
Yeah. I agree. I tried to go back and pull memories, and some stuff I totally forgot. And I'm sure it's the same. I mean, it was 25 years ago for me, for you too. So it's not like it was something that I thought about all the time because we got so busy,
And
had more
I
kids.
I put a lot of it behind me. There were a few token stories that I would share when I would go
Hmm.
speak to medical professionals, because with our foundation, we do go speak to like pre professionals, things like that. And there were some I shared, but I, I never really gone back and really reviewed the whole year. And when we were preparing for this episode, I went back and I started remembering each step of the story. Um, and I remember stuff that I've kind of buried for a while. And that was a
Hmm.
hard one. And John's like, "Why are you putting yourself through this?" And I was like, do you want to listen to the podcast? He's like, "Hell no, I lived through it." But
Yeah.
I think for me, we talked last episode about those medical traumas. And I have to relive some of this to heal. And knowing that my kid's pain is going to help somebody else, or just hoping it helps somebody else, maybe just gives me a little bit of peace of of some silver lining or something that comes out
Right.
of this shit. I mean,
Well, and also I think as reliving some of it, yes, I'm sure you had tears. I had tears going through some of it, and I thought I put some of that behind me, but I didn't apparently. And I don't know that I will ever, because there are memories that are ingrained into like micro traumas that we've talked about before, that we go through these things that shape and mold us. But as I was telling one of the twins today, that these are micro traumas have shaped us into the moms that we became. And we probably wouldn't be the same type of mom, maybe, if we didn't have all of those experiences.
and for me, those micro traumas, those experiences, positive and negative,
Hmm.
make me a better mom, but I think it also makes me a better professional because I do work in the field of disabilities and I have a different
Right.
appreciation. I don't know what it's like for my students, but I can empathize in a different way. I don't know exactly
Mm.
that family story, but I can share my own personal experience, and it builds a trust and a connection because once you have a kid with a disability, it's a club, it's an
Yeah.
unspoken club. You and I are members of that club, and it's almost like, you see a person across the room and you're like, "I get you," because we have something ingrained in us that's a little different.
Yeah,
I know,
definitely.
cheesy, but you know.
No, I mean, it's like with every experience, everyone teaches somebody else something, but it came from experiences that makes it more genuine.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and just for our listeners, I think one thing that's really interesting is Janine and I have been friends for 21 years, but I've never heard this story she's going to share today. I've never heard about Morgan's first year of life. Again, we've shared bits and snippets of each other's stories, but we've never
Yeah.
really sat down and talked about that first year, because I think it's probably the most difficult one of the most difficult. I think the year I lost Hallie was the most difficult.
Yeah.
But going through all the firsts, it's fun.
Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna laugh at me because it's a Harry Potter reference. But I love the first Harry Potter movie because you see magic for the first time in the movie and in the book. It's
Hmm.
huge. And I was like, my first view of being a mom, I expected that same magic to come out, where all these things I imagined parenthood would be like, everything I saw
Yeah.
in the movies, everything I read in the books, what to expect when you're expecting, and nothing was accurate.
No,
So
no, no. And nothing prepares you. And I think because we were going in blind, both of us.
100%. We didn't know anything prior to their delivery or even till they were older,
No.
a little older. All right.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, but these stories also are just going to touch on that first feelings and experiences that we had finding out that the plan didn't go to plan. And
Absolutely.
I think there's so much more to it that we'll have to get into later time, because we'd be talking for days and days and days with no break. So,
I know. I
But I
do have to
can,
preface, we did say we were going to try and do like the kids' first year or the girls' first year. I only got through 5 months because Hallie's was a little traumatic, but we're
yeah.
going to go into so many stories. This is why this podcast could live on forever. But we'll let you start and tell us a little bit about Morgan's first year.
Okay. As I said, Morgan's 25 now, and but this is kind of her little journey and the journey that we had as becoming parents for the first time. When I was pregnant with Morgan, I had all the typical dreams: the first steps, birthday parties, play dates, first love. I imagined her growing up and maybe learning to drive, getting married, all of those beautiful milestones that you picture what you want for your child. But looking back, that was just the beginning of a much different journey. My pregnancy was relatively easy, complication free. The only significant thing was I was 6 days past my due date when my water finally broke late at night. I went into the hospital and they started me on antibiotics immediately because I had the group B strep. So I tried to rest because I figured I was going to be up early and get putting my body through a whole fun stuff. So I kind of just waited until the contractions started. I was given Pitocin to try to move things along, and we just waited and waited and waited for hours. And I didn't know any better at that time, but I wish I had gotten up and walked and moved to try to help progress the pregnancy, but I didn't know any better. And I was just focused on, oh, I'm never going to rest again after this little being is in my hands. And we didn't know Morgan was a girl, so that was also a little surprise. But by mid afternoon, things took a turn, and the nurses would keep coming in off and on and telling me that they had to move me because her heart rate would drop.
Hmm.
So I would say that probably happened, I would say 3 or 4 times throughout the day. So I kind of just went with it, and they didn't seem all that alarmed. So I was like, okay. The doctor wasn't there because they're basically on call and they only come in when you're ready to push. And it was a different doctor I hadn't met before on call that day that they would call. So
Of
then
course.
around 6 or 7 o'clock, when the change of shift happened, my doctor came in, and he was the one that I had seen, that I joined that practice for, that I really liked and I connected with. So I trusted him. But so he went and checked me, and almost instantly things accelerated. He had me start pushing right away. The cord was wrapped around Morgan's neck twice, and she was delivered using forceps. And then I remember as he finished up, I remember him trying to tend to me, do my episiotomy, and he kept looking back because I don't think she had cried yet, and he kept looking back at her like in the little incubator. And I remember Steven kind of going over there and trying to help me, but then going over with the baby. And I could just, I don't know, I just felt it in the air, his concern. No one said much, but I felt it. Her initial APGAR was a 4, and her second one was an 8. So other than that, she was able to come and stay with me in my room. So we didn't have to, she wasn't in the NICU or anything, but they just kind of watched her and just made sure she was eating. And I nursed. So she seemed to do okay. And when the pediatrician came in the following day, she reviewed the doctor labor notes and decided to order a CAT scan to rule out any skull fractures because they used the forceps. But thankfully, no fractures. Scan was perfect, and we were sent home, and all was good. The only other significant thing from that visit was my husband bought a car while I was in the hospital. But as you'll learn through all of
That
our
is
history and multiple babies, that seems to be something he does every baby. But I'm just putting that out
that is
there. So,
such a Steven thing to do. No
yeah.
push gift though for mom, huh?
Well, I had a little convertible car that I loved, but I had to get rid of it because I couldn't put a baby in it. I got a new car. I guess that was my push
Oh,
baby,
that
right?
works. Steven
Yeah,
does
my
like
push
to buy
baby.
cars though.
He does. So in the weeks and months that followed, we started to notice small signs. She wasn't making really good eye contact. She kind of drifted a little bit with her eyes, wouldn't really focus on us or baby objects and toys. She was very, how do you say, like lack of muscle tone. So of course we didn't know that that was an issue then, but we used to call her Noodle because she was kind of floppy.
Hmm.
And at first we told ourselves that every baby's different. So that was kind of like in the back of my mind, though, that I just felt like something was maybe going on, that she was just developing differently. Because I had a very good friend, Mary Beth, who we had gone through the labor together and the delivery of our daughters, and she had her little girl, Allison, was 2 days younger than Morgan.
Oh, wow.
And it was really apparent that
Oh.
Allison was like a super baby to me. She was one of the like super strong. And I was always like, oh, it must be because Mary Beth swam every single day when she was pregnant. So her baby
She was a swimmer too.
she was an Olympian. And I was like, I always thought she was so strong because she was like lifting up her head, arching her body off the floor, and Morgan would face plant.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like just a very different development. So deep down, I had to have known something because I had taken all those early development classes when I was getting my education degree. So I just, I at her 4-month visit, I asked the doctor, I kind of feel like she's not really pushing up on her arms at all, and her head seems to kind of wobble. So the doctor just kind of tucked her arms up underneath her to see if she could hold her body up. And she could kind of do it, but I mean, it wasn't strong. In my mind, it was concerning, but I'm like, well, you're the professional. You know this, you see this all the time. So I just left it up to them. And then I would say over the next 2 months, we were around family more. We had visited family in Massachusetts. And she had another cousin who was 2 months younger than her. And she was even doing things that Morgan wasn't doing.
So that kind of
So
showed you a
I
little more.
knew, yeah, and I knew when I went home from that next week we were back in the office, and I think at that point the pediatrician seemed to see what we saw, and
Yeah.
it just, and I don't know whether it's that they just see so many kids that that they all
There's so
develop at
much
different
variation.
times. Right. So I don't know. And I'm like, I love her desperately. Like, she is a fantastic doctor. So I don't have any ill will in thinking that she missed something. Because then with that next visit, the referrals started. And then we started physical therapy. We got referred to early intervention. And then we finally got in with a neurologist to do some, muscle testing and some he wanted to see if she had seizures, because that was kind of like the blank stares that were kind of going on. But we met with him probably 3 times through the course of the testing, which ran probably 2 months or so, 2, 3 months. And then he came up with his diagnosis. So he sat us down and he said that she has a visual disturbance, infantile autism, which he'd seen once before in his career, and
Wow.
a muscle disorder. And I don't know, the air left the room. I don't know. I still get chills even just thinking about it, because I don't
Were you alone with Morgan or was Stephen
know.
there?
We were both there, thank goodness.
Okay.
I don't know. I think it was just one of those times that I don't know. It wasn't what I was expecting.
Yeah.
And I remember leaving
Ignorance
the
is
office trying to be strong and not overreact and think that the end of the world happened. I remember being in the kitchen and I desperately needed a reaction from Steven, because you want to know that you're not alone in this journey and that
right.
they heard the same thing that you heard.
What was his reaction? Did he cry?
He didn't really have one at first. He's one to kind of sit and think on things a little bit,
Yeah, he and John are a
and
lot alike that way.
he didn't. And I needed a reaction. I don't know, so I pushed and I poked and I poked until I got one.
Oh,
And I know I don't feel proud of that, but I was crying and grieving the future we'd imagined. The
huge.
driving lessons, prom, walking her down the aisle. And I remember us standing in the kitchen. He just gave me a hug and said it would be okay and that we'll do it together. Sorry. But we never did go back to that doctor. That's putting it nicely. We found a new doctor that aligned more with us, and she basically diagnosed her with global developmental delays. So kind of was just giving her time to develop, and we'll see what happens. I don't think medical professionals really understand how much damage they can do to families when they don't practice with empathy and basic common sense.
And I
I'm
think
like, I feel like I have PTSD from that whole experience, because I even hear his name from like my neighbor. They use him and they're like, oh, he's the greatest doctor. And I'm like, I feel like I get sucker punched.
oh,
It's awful.
I just realized who you're talking about. I won't mention names, but yeah,
Yeah,
I know.
no, but
We had a bad experience with Neely
it's
with that.
that gut reaction. But our pediatrician recommended him for my other daughter for migraines, and I was like, yeah, no, I will never see him like ever again. And she's like, well, why? He's great. My daughter goes to him. And I'm like, well, your daughter gets migraines. It's different. It's like, I don't know. I maybe he was just younger in his career. I don't know. I'm not making excuses for him because he was a jerk.
Yeah, it's I think that doctors don't realize the importance of delivery is just as important of delivering the message as the message
Yeah,
itself, and we are the only we are the they may give let me see if I can say this.
yeah,
They may give, 300 diagnoses in their career, but we only get 1 for our kids,
yeah.
and you don't forget those words, and you don't forget the attitude with which they deliver those words.
That's the truth.
Sucks.
Yeah.
I was just gonna ask you, could you kinda talk about what helped you talked about grieving from what you hoped for Morgan in that first when those thoughts of wanting her to
Mhm.
go to prom and find her first love and her first kiss and make friends. How did you get from that point in that first year to fighting for the life Morgan could have, to your new life? Does that make
I
sense?
I think for us, as everything settled, I just think, yeah, we just had a mind shift. We decided that those diagnoses were not going to define who she is. She was much more than medical codes. And we decided that we can't worry about the things I can't control. And our job as parents were to provide her what she needed to develop into the most that she could. And I think it was a gradual mindset. It didn't happen overnight because I wouldn't change her for anything. And she's the best part of our family. And you ask every one of us that she makes us better. And she's kept our marriage together. Like she makes it worth fighting over the stupid arguments you have or the things that you can't control.
All you have to do is meet Morgan to know she's the center of that family.
Yeah. Well, she's something. We call her Little Miss Magics.
We said this episode wasn't gonna be easy. I guess I should
No.
have said I'm the crier of the duo too. I cry way too much
Well,
sometimes, so
but as the year progressed, we got her into speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and we started genetic testing so then we could decide whether or not we wanted to grow our family and if there was anything else that we could do. But there's a whole lot more there, which we'll get into later. But progress was slow, but she was trying, and we were there every step of the way. And I was incredibly blessed to have a supportive husband, family, and a group of friends. I don't know how I would have done it without them.
I wish I had known you guys then. I didn't meet you till Morgan was 4, so
Yeah, I know. But I also think our journeys weren't met. We weren't ready to meet each other.
yeah. I was too
I think
exhausted those first couple years.
well, but also those first couple years, I don't know how it would have been having someone else going through such heavy stuff also and being
100%.
able to support that friendship the way it would need to be. Because we found that through later years also, we had a time period that we struggled with that. So I think early on, the friends I did have, none of them had children with any type of disability or delay or illnesses. We did have one little girl that did pass away from kidney cancer when she was like 8 months old, but over everyone and all my support system, I didn't have anyone that had anything else. So I think that allowed a little give and take. Like my friend Nicole, her and Mary Beth would push me to go out and do things that I wouldn't normally have done, like the play groups. The play groups were hard for me to go to because everyone's baby's crawling all over the place, but mine's not.
Mhm.
So, but they pushed me to go for the social aspects for me, not for her. So I'm like, there's a lot of appreciation for those friends during that time.
Yeah, everybody's in your life. I don't think things happen by coincidence, but I think things are meant to be. And I think you had the right people in your life at the right time. And many of those people are still with you, which is amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, through it all, though, I just remember I kept hoping that someone, anyone, a pediatrician, a therapist, to be honest, anyone would say that this is just a phase and that she'll catch up. But no one ever did. So instead, I just did whatever I could to learn how to help her and be her biggest advocate and make her life happy because that's what I could control.
And that's what you did.
I hope so. I hope that's what we did.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with me. It was nice to hear that side, the side I haven't heard before.
Well, it's nice to share it because I haven't with really anyone. I've never really talked about it. So it's definitely cathartic. But, and as the listeners will hear, as our stories and journeys are very different. So we'll experience Jill's journey of becoming a mom. So I'll pass the mic to my co host because her story deserves to be heard as well.
Thank you, Janine. Again, thank you very much for being open with us and with me and letting me share part of that healing process of talking about that first year. I think that's important. And it's one thing we talk about is sharing our story, using our voice, not just for others to grow and learn, but to help ourselves. So I've shared
Yeah.
bits and pieces of this story about Hallie many times. So I just, I never know what parts I'm going to share, but I knew something was wrong, in all honesty, from the beginning. The very day I found out I was pregnant, I knew something was wrong with my baby. The day I got that pregnancy test that was positive, something inside me in my gut said, pray for her mind, her body, and her spirit. And so every day
Oh.
I would be like, God, please protect this child. I go, oh my God, I didn't say that prayer. Pray for my body and spirit. It was like something insanely embedded in me. I didn't know what was wrong, but I did know something was wrong. And I eventually communicated that with the doctors, and they did stress tests and they kept saying, no, everything's fine. I was only
Hmm.
24 years old and I was an anxious, yeah, super young, super young. I was an anxious mom to be. I was an anxious human being before being pregnant. And now I was an anxious mom to be. I was a brand new wife. Um, I was a visiting instructor at a university. John was finishing law school. We had just gotten married in July of 99, and we were told we might have trouble conceiving due to my endometriosis. So we figured, why not try early? And to our surprise, 2 months after we got married, we found out we were expecting.
Oh
Um,
gosh.
and Hallie was due right around our 1 year anniversary. So it was early
Hmm.
July 2000.
Yeah.
John was actually so adorable. He was adorably clueless. He didn't know what to do with a growing belly. We had just gotten married. We were so young. And every night, his way of connecting was to sing the Notre Dame fight song to my
Oh
belly.
my god.
But he wanted the baby to hear his voice. So every night I'd be in a rocking
That's
chair and
sweet.
and we'd hear cheer, cheer for old Notre Dame.
He helped provide her fighting spirit.
He did. We did. Little did we know. And looking back, we were such babies ourselves. So,
I.
despite my unease and this desire to pray every day, I did try to enjoy the pregnancy. But when it came to that triple screen test where you check for Down syndrome and other
Hmm.
kind of issues, I asked the doctor, I said, by then they knew how anxious I was. And I
Yeah.
said, should I get this test? What does it involve? And she's like, oh, you're young, you're anxious. We don't need to worry about that one.
Oh really?
She's like, yeah, you don't need it. You're 24. Don't worry about it. So I wasn't worried. And I wasn't worried until June 2nd of 2000, the day Hallie was born. I had just had
How
my
early was she?
she was 5 weeks early.
5 weeks.
So I had just had my baby shower at work. Yeah, John had just gotten a job offer on Tuesday. Friday, we ordered pizza and we were looking at apartments online in Nashville because his job was in Nashville and we were going to move from Florida. And I went to the bathroom and my water broke. And I screamed, John, we need to go to the hospital. The baby's coming. And he's like, he had memorized the number for labor and delivery. So he grabbed the phone, he called labor and delivery. They said, come on in. And so I said, John, we got to go. And he goes, I just ordered a pizza. And I was like, babe, the baby's coming. It's 5 o'clock rush hour. So we get to the hospital. He's like, let's make sure it's really your water. And the nurse is like, no, her water broke. She had done the test strip. I said,
Hmm.
call my mom, call my mom. And John's like, wait, I got to cancel the pizza first.
Priorities.
Priorities, absolutely. Men. So he canceled the pizza, then called my mom. Hallie was breech. They tried to turn her. It didn't work.
Yeah.
So we ended up having to have a C-section. She was born at
Mhm.
10:25 that night, June 2nd. Her APGARs were 3 and 5, so they were
Mm.
pretty rough.
Yeah.
She wasn't breathing well at all. It's interesting because when you told your story about Stephen, it's very similar to John and going back and forth. John, if you don't know, faints at the sight of blood. And he
Vaguely
kept
remember that.
yeah, and he kept jumping up and checking between the team working on Hallie and me, and they would say, "Sir, sit down. You're pale as a ghost." And then he'd go back and forth. They finally stabilized her, and they let John. They were. It was so. It was like, whew. They stabilized her, and they let John carry her to the NICU.
Oh.
John, my husband is a very kind of big guy. And he was carrying her down the hall from the operating room to the
Mhm.
NICU. And I later found out that Hallie stopped breathing on the way to the NICU. And John had a nurse on one side and a respiratory therapist on the other side. And they were both like barely 5 feet tall. And they were trying to reach up and grab the baby to like get her breathing.
Right.
And John held her so tight and he said no. And he held her up like Mufasa or something. And he goes, cheer, cheer for old Notre Dame. And he starts singing. And Hallie just lets out this scream. And they go, keep singing and run. And they're running down the hall singing the Notre Dame fight song.
Oh
And
my
anyone who
god.
saw that must have thought they were crazy. But she started breathing again.
Wow. That must've been so scary for him.
It was, he hasn't talked about it.
'Cause it's like you entrusted your newborn baby with him to take her and get her to where she needed to go.
And he wouldn't let those nurses touch
Yeah.
her. Hours later, by the time I woke up, because they had little happy juice for me, and I started to have a panic attack on the operating table, so they knocked me out fully. When I woke
Yeah.
up a few hours later, they were prepping her to be transferred. We were at a smaller hospital in Gainesville. They were transferring
Mm.
her to a higher level hospital.
I
Um,
didn't realize that they moved her.
yeah, so I couldn't see her for 3 days because I had surgery, and they can't release you for three
Oh
days.
my. It's so hard.
Fortunately, we had family that lived a couple hours away, and both sets of parents came up and would take turns sitting with Hallie at the higher level NICU, staying with me.
Was it in Gainesville?
It was in Gainesville. Yep.
Yeah. So you
So
were in the same town.
yeah, it went from like North Florida Regional to Shands, so it's
Okay.
only like 5 miles apart, but it was
No, it's still a significant difference
a
with the
huge
quality.
difference when you're
Mhm.
not there with the baby.
Right.
And I remember walking the hospital halls because they said, "We'll discharge you Sunday." She was born Friday. They said, "We'll discharge
Yeah.
you Sunday if you can get up and walk around." So I started walking around, and I remember telling
Oh,
John, I was like, "We have to pray that God will keep our child alive, that God will heal her." And John said something to me that I'll never forget. He said, "Jill, she's not just our child; she is God's child." And when God
wow.
is ready to take her home, we'll face that. And
Wow.
sorry.
No, you're good.
And I clung to those words for years with Hallie. Every time she coded or anytime she would be in crisis, I would remember she is not just my child, she is God's child. When it's her time, I have to accept that. And when she eventually went into hospice, I kept saying that to my head. This is her journey. This is not mine.
Mhm.
I only have so much I can control. And years later, after Hallie passed away at the age of 15, I remember John and I were just sitting in our room together talking before the funeral. And I told John how much those words meant to me. And he laughed and he said, "I said that? What a horrible thing to say." And I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
That's
He
really
did.
funny.
He's like, "That's horrible to say she may die." And I was like, "No, you said it in a nice way." But it was so funny. He didn't even remember it at all.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, those words gave me so much comfort, especially in her last year. And we both just
Yeah.
laughed about it. We're like, how pitiful we are. Anyway, back to the story. When I was finally discharged, I got to go to Shands. And I remember my
Mhm.
dad met me at
Yeah.
John's and as we're walking in. And I stopped and I told my dad, I'm just scared to get too close to Hallie.
Hmm.
And I said, if I get close to her, it's going to hurt more when she dies.
No.
And my dad said, Jill, she's your daughter. It's going to hurt like hell either way. So spend every second you can with her. And I was like, oh, you're right.
Some good advice now and then.
Yeah, they do, they do. And I mentioned that to my dad years later. He didn't remember saying that either. I don't know if
Yeah.
men just have bad memories, or we just appreciate or we just appreciate when they say something good like that. But anyway, Hallie stayed in the NICU for 3 weeks. NICU stay was just like many. There are many ups and downs. We'd have crises and then she'd stabilize. And eventually, after a few weeks, they sent us home. No monitors, no medical equipment. But I remember voicing some concerns at the end because I would feed her and she would kind of
Hmm.
gargle on her bottle or after she eat. And to me, it seemed like she was choking. And they said, no, all her issues were just being a preemie. You're just an anxious new mom. She's picking up on your
Hmm.
anxious energy. She's fine. She could never latch on. We should have known she was low tone because she wasn't, for us, she wasn't latching on. And when you'd put her up on your shoulder at like a month old, she couldn't lift her head like a
Yeah.
typical baby. And they said, oh, every baby
Yeah.
develops at a different time. But I knew that something was going on. Like this choking was there. And they
Yeah.
said, oh, no, she's fine. She's fine. So we went back to our apartment. And at the time, John was really studying for the bar exam. So Hallie and I went and stayed with my mom. And I remember she would have those gurgling episodes after eating. And they're like, and she broke out in these bumps everywhere. And they said, oh, that's baby
Wow.
acne. Don't worry about it. And then one night she choked horribly during a feeding and we couldn't clear her airway. My
Oh
mom
gosh.
flipped her over and did back blows. My mom lived like a mile from the ER. So we just ran to the car and rushed her to
Mhm.
the ER. We were able to get her airway clear in the car. But by the time we got to the ER, she was breathing and crying, but her oxygen was only 72 upon arrival,
Oh
which is,
wow.
yeah, really low.
That's crazy.
We were in a small town, and this small town ER doctor was one of the first amazing human beings that were in her journey because she was stable
Hmm.
and he got her oxygen up to 98. But he listened to my concerns. He listened to me saying she was choking, and he believed me. And he said, my gut's telling me what your gut's telling you. Something else is going on with this baby. And
Yeah.
he ordered for her to be transferred to the children's hospital.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That must have felt so validating.
it did.
Have doctors just dismissing your concerns and like your intuition, and then this stranger, basically.
Total stranger. And he was
Yeah.
right. I mean, he was so right. And it was so validating. And it was just the beginning of me starting to realize one, listen to your gut. And two, it's
Hmm.
important to find doctors that listen to you. He
Yeah.
was right because when we got to the children's hospital after days of testing, the test showed she did have a swallowing disorder and she was
Mhm.
silently aspirating, including aspiration on her reflux. She
Yeah.
had an NG tube, a feeding tube placed through her nose, and she was placed on an apnea monitor. I ended up pushing for genetic testing because, again, my gut's saying something else is going on with this baby.
Hmm.
The neurologist rolled his eyes at me and he
Hmm.
said that her EEG and MRI came back normal. Your child is fine. And you guessed it. He said, I'm an anxious first time mom. The pulmonologist at the time humored me and ran the test only because he knew my dad.
That's ridiculous.
But he said, mark my word, it's going to come back normal. Newsflash, he was wrong.
Right.
We were young, we were exhausted, we were barely hanging on. But we had family and friends who showed up, and we leaned on their love, their laughter, and their Diet Coke runs as often as possible from McDonald's preference.
Well, I was going to say, if anyone knows you, they know that you have a major addiction to your McDonald's Diet Cokes.
Thank you. It's a McDonald's fountain Diet Coke. Before
Yep.
discharge, one of the hard things was before discharge, we had to be trained for infant CPR. We had to learn how to use the apnea monitor, how to use the suction machine, how to use the feeding pump. And I remember the
A
hospital
lot.
list at the time, Dr. Safferstein, amazing doctor. He took me aside and he said, I just want you to know that in all of my career, Hallie was one of the sickest babies I've ever seen. It's really a miracle she's alive. And I was like, finally, someone's believing me that this baby has something going on. And I felt
Mhm.
so heard. And I finally felt like she was getting the help she needed desperately.
Yeah.
But we were far from done because by 3 months, she was in feeding therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy. She was still low tone, not sitting up. She was still choking and struggling. And I remember one day, John had moved to Nashville by the time. And I remember I was sitting on the couch. We had just had to deal with an apnea episode with Hallie, and we finally got her settled. And I sat on the couch, and my mom's sitting here. And I remember I'm a little dramatic if people don't know me. Um,
No.
oh, maybe just a little after you get the story. But I remember
Love it.
I literally threw my head on my mom's shoulder, and I go, "How many tears can I shed?" And in classic Donna style, my mom stood up and threw her arms up and she goes, "Lakes, rivers, oceans." And I looked at her like she was nuts. And then we both collapsed on the couch laughing and laughing and laughing and happy tears because we just have to laugh at ourselves. If you don't
Yeah.
laugh, you cry. And my mom said, "Jill, seriously, when you lose your smile and your sense of humor, that's when I'm going to worry about you." And those would be the times when she would check in on me and fly up to visit me or do something else to
Mhm.
support me because that was my sign that something was wrong.
Yeah.
So we saw doctor after doctor. One GI told me I was the problem, believe it or not, that Hallie felt my anxiety. I was scared to trust my gut because I thought they're the doctors, they know best.
They know better. Yeah.
100%. So I was like, "Oh, I wonder if the genetic testing is back from when we were in 4 weeks ago." So I went down to the pulmonologist's office and and they said, "Oh, we'll ask the doctor." And so the doctor walks out into the waiting room. I'm here with Hallie in the stroller. The waiting room is full. And in front of all these people, he hands me a piece of
Oh,
paper and he said, "Your daughter has a rare chromosome deletion, 18q deletion. Here's a referral to genetics."
that's how he told you?
That was diagnosis day. He then
Oh my
turned
god.
and walked away. And I said, "Is there anything else you can tell me?" And he went like this with his head over his shoulder and he goes, "Nah, I don't know anything about it." It was so
Wow.
harsh, so painful, and so scary. At the time, it was bittersweet, right? Because we finally have
Right.
a diagnosis, 18q deletion, but what is
Yeah.
it? And it was also just like someone was so callous in how they told me. I got home that night, Googled 18q deletion. Granted, it's 2000, so it's early
Yeah. Well,
Google. And there were only 50 reported cases ever on record worldwide of 18q deletion.
wow.
And the
I didn't
prognosis
realize it was that rare.
at the time it was because diagnoses weren't strong at then. Now
Mhm.
genetic testing's more
Yeah.
fluid and gets more diagnoses. But at the time we were told low IQ, major medical problems, and life expectancy is unknown. But I remember my mom saying something that grounded me. And I think I might have said this on the first podcast, but she looked at me and she said, "Jill, Hallie is the same baby you fed this morning before she got a diagnosis that is she is this evening after the diagnosis. Do not let that
Yeah.
define her." And that's some of the advice I
That's
try to give.
powerful.
Yeah, it was so powerful to me. And I had to look past a label to remember she's my baby. Through our
Yeah.
connections, did get into a geneticist who confirmed the worst of what I had read. I heard she may not walk, she may not talk, she may not eat, and she would most likely be cognitively impaired. When I
Mhm.
asked about life prognosis, she goes, "Oh, I think I read something that she could live to be 2 or 5."
Really?
And John had driven down from Nashville. So it was me, my mom, and John, and we were shell shocked at that time.
Yeah.
We
Well,
happened to
it's not what you expect after having a baby to be told that.
and she was doing, I mean, despite all the medical issues, she was like making eye contact and she was babbling and she was cooing. She was doing the things we had hoped she would do at that age. So we were hopeful. We finally got her stable enough to move to Nashville. John was in his job up there.
Mhm.
So my mom and I drove up 2 long days. We arrived at like 2 in the morning. John woke up, was so excited to see us in Nashville that he like grabbed Hallie and he put his arm around me and he's like, "Let's go outside and look at the stars in our new city." And Hallie had another episode of
Oh gosh.
reflux and choking, and we couldn't clear her airway. And we come running back in, and my mom, the queen, flips her over, does the back blows. We get her airway clear, we suction her mouth. And by then it's like 3 or 4 in the morning, and we had a pediatrician appointment at 7. And we're like, we're not going to get through an ER any quicker. So we just waited till the next morning.
True. True.
And the pediatrician we saw was absolutely amazing. He got us into early intervention. He gave
Mhm.
us supportive, real advice. This pediatrician also believed me when I shared Hallie's symptoms that we saw at home. And he told me, Anytime she turns blue, anytime she chokes that like that, I want you in my office. And that first month with him, we were in his office 21 of 25 weekdays. And
Wow.
I apologized. I was like, I am sorry we were in here so much. I just am worried. I guess I'm an anxious mom because I was repeating what other people told me. And he
Hmm.
said, you probably should be here more. So don't ever apologize. My guess is you're handling more at home than you should be.
Yeah.
And he was right. And that changed with another emergency. Allie had a horrible choking spell at the end of November. We couldn't get her airway cleared. Don had her over the sink with a suction machine. I called 911. The minutes were ticking by. Seconds felt like hours. And I called 911. It rang and it rang
Oh,
six times.
wow.
911 did not pick up. I hung up the phone. The pediatrician had an emergency line. They were a mile from our apartment. They
Mhm.
said the crash route is ready, come now. When we got there,
Wow.
they got her breathing, called an ambulance from their office. She was admitted, and tests then showed that Hallie's stomach sphincter muscle was not working. Her low
Hmm.
tone was prevalent throughout her entire body. She needed to have a surgery called a Nissen funduplication, which actually ties off the top of her stomach, and a
Hmm.
permanent G tube placed. We were so fortunate. There was a surgeon at Vanderbilt Children's Hospital that was an expert in this procedure. He told us Hallie wasn't the youngest baby he had done this procedure on, but she was the smallest because she was only 9 pounds at 5 months of age.
Wow. She couldn't keep anything in to absorb.
Like Hallie in all Hallie fashion, she didn't follow recovery rules either. There was a 1 in a million type side effect with this surgery that she could retch and you would have to
Oh,
vent
wow.
her G tube. And it was just like they said, oh, but it won't happen. It's 1 in a million. So one night after feeding her, she began to retch violently. It was so much pain for her. I vented the tube. The tube is going all over. Formula and bile are flying
Oh,
all
God.
over. I'm crying. The baby's screaming, and poor John was trying to calm us both down. And finally, when we got her settled, and in another room, I just broke, and I was like, "Fuck God, fuck life. Why the fuck my kid?" And John just said, Jill, I think we should say a little prayer. I was like, fuck you. There's no God. I was so angry. And John still said this little prayer: God, could you please show my wife you're still there? And could you please help my wife find her smile again? And you can guess what my response to John was after that. Yeah, it was the F word yet again.
I was like,
I don't remember. Ended up going shopping. Had a miserable time because people were happy Christmas shopping. I came
yeah.
home and I'm like, I'm going to bed. I was so broken. And a few hours later, John woke me up and he said, Jill, you need to come outside. And I walked outside and it was snowing. And as a Florida kid, I'd never seen snowfall.
Yeah.
And John had Hallie strapped to the front of him, and I was out there doing snow angels and throwing snowballs and bringing it up for Hallie to see. And we made a little
Yeah.
miniature snowman with a toothpick for the nose. And we were laughing in the cold. And John looked at me and he said, what a beautiful way for God to show us he's still here. And if I'm not mistaken, that's a smile on your face.
Oh.
And I was like, that snow was my sign. That winter, it actually snowed 7 to 8 times in Nashville. And every time Hallie went into crisis or we called 911 or we had to resuscitate her, that night it snowed.
Really?
Truly. And
Someone's watching out for you.
somebody's watching out for her at least. And in the middle of all that chaos and all that pain, I was able to find my smile again. Not because things got easier by any means, but because I started looking for hope. And Hallie, our beautiful, stubborn, tube pulling, Notre Dame fight song cheering miracle was always worth hoping for. She had so many more struggles the rest of that year. And John lost his job and we moved back to Florida. There were so many ups and downs, but I knew that she was worth it and she was worth being a strong mom for.
They definitely shape who we've become and the kind of parent, mom, dad that we've all become. I knew that she had struggled a lot just from miscellaneous stories here and there, but I didn't realize that she had crashed that frequently. I knew she had a feeding tube, but I didn't realize the severity of her aspirating. And I understand how scary that is because we've had that happen with Morgan later on quite a bit. It's a miracle. She was a miracle baby.
She was. And that really shaped who I was as a human being. And I think you said this in the beginning of the podcast, a lot of what we've taken on makes us the moms we are. And it was the whole reason all these doctors delivering this message made me realize that there are a lot of amazing doctors and nurses and
Right.
medical professionals that are in our lives forever. And I will shout
Right.
their names: Dr. Tappan, Dr. Patton, Dr. Nevlet, all those amazing doctors.
Yeah.
But there are still some that need growth in their communication with patients. And that's what I went through with Hallie, what I went through with my other kids made me want to go back and do this for a living, to be an
Mhm.
advocate. And this is one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this podcast, because I hope these stories can also help some families, but also learn to use their voice and listen to their voice sooner than maybe I did,
Mhm.
but also for doctors to hear that it's important that we're human beings, that there's a voice, that there's a person behind that diagnosis.
I think one of the bigger things that came out of your story too is that you kept at it. You trusted your gut, even though you didn't think you were. You really did. You trusted your gut. And I don't know that Hallie would have gotten through a lot of those things if you hadn't trusted your gut and pushed for her and pushed and advocated. It
Thank
shows the
you.
kind of person that you are.
I
And you
appreciate
should
that.
celebrate that because you are. You're a strong mama.
You know, it's really interesting. When Hallie was dying, she made a bucket list. And one of the things she shared on her bucket list was that she wanted to be a history teacher. She loved history, everything about it.
Yeah.
And she always said, you need to learn from your past if you're ever going to go further in the future. And I kind of feel like sharing her story. Every time I share her story and say her name, I feel like she is a history teacher, because
Hmm.
maybe someone's going to learn something from her story today. And maybe someone's going to learn something from Morgan's story. But it allows me to let Hallie be part of her bucket list, still checking off that list.
And
So
we'll celebrate that every time we.
100%. 100%.
Mm.
Um, Well, as we
Well,
wrap up this episode today, I was wondering if maybe you could think of anything that we could leave with people, maybe a few things we wish someone had told us earlier in our journey.
I know our family, we've learned a lot, mostly the hard way. And while we can't go back in time, we can pass along some of that wisdom to anyone who might need to hear it now.
Agreed, agreed. Looking back, I wish someone had told me trust your gut from day one.
Yes.
That little voice inside of you, it really does know. You know your child better than anyone else. My instincts were whispering and sometimes screaming at me that
Yeah.
something wasn't right. And I had to learn that my voice wasn't just valid, it was vital in Hallie's life and in my other kids' lives.
That's a powerful statement. I just wish someone had told me it's okay to grieve also.
Mm,
Because grief doesn't mean that you're not strong. It doesn't mean that you don't love your child with every fiber of your being. It
100%.
just means that you're human and it's a normal reaction and you're holding more than most people can even imagine.
Mm,
Because grief didn't mean that I didn't accept her or didn't want her or didn't love her or that I wanted someone or a different child. It just helped me move past what I had planned.
what you expected parenthood to be like.
Yeah.
It was just different.
And I had to let go of things I couldn't control.
I hadn't thought about it in that way, that you have to grieve and let go of your expectations to really
Hmm.
fully be able to go on to that next step.
Yeah.
And you've done a great job because your family's absolutely
Thank you.
amazing.
We try. All I can do.
Exactly. That's all any of us can do. One thing I wish someone had told me was you can fire a doctor.
Gosh, yes.
When I
I
was
know you think you
younger,
can't.
what?
I know you think you can.
100%. When I was younger, I was a total people pleaser who avoided
Hmm.
conflict. But then I became a mom and the gloves came off. And now I fight for my kids and I don't apologize for it. The first time I fired that doctor, I was like, all right, who's up next? Because I wasn't going to, I wanted to create a team of people who were going to really support my kids,
Yeah.
and I needed people that were going to listen to us and believe in us. And if there's any medical professionals listening, remember that you are need to include us in part of that team. You need to include the child,
Hmm.
the parents, because we know our kids better than anyone else. So
Yeah.
if you want to, we're paying the bills, so you better keep us
True.
part of the
True.
process.
They do. They work for us.
Exactly.
Yeah. I wish someone had shown me a glimpse of the life that we have now
Mm.
Because it's hard, but it's also filled with joy I didn't expect, purpose, and love that's deeper than I ever imagined.
I love that one. Wouldn't that have been nice to have a magic ball? I
Oh,
used to
yeah.
tell therapists, can you just like look in your crystal ball and tell me she'll be okay?
Yeah.
But I think that would have been nice. That's a good one. I would love
Then you
to
can see
have.
the other side. That so it gives you a different perspective of you're seeing the other side of it,
Yeah,
that you will get there.
maybe someone will hear our stories and say they got through it. Maybe we will too.
Well, that's the hope.
Yeah. Honestly, I wish someone had told me to throw out the damn parenting
Uh,
books.
yes, because that book, the What to Expect When You're Expecting, or the first year, it's like that first year one
Oh, I
too.
hated
Yeah,
that
no,
one. Our
no.
kids are writing their own stories and they don't fit in any
Yeah,
chapters that have been written before. So just throw
yeah.
out the books, just enjoy where you are, listen to our podcast. We'll help you through it.
Well, we've learned a lot, so hopefully that what we've learned, other people can take something from it and be able to apply it to what they're going through. Because sometimes it's the hard way, but we've always found strength we didn't know we had.
Absolutely. And if any of this sounds familiar to any of you, we want to leave you with this. If you are a parent listening to this right now and you're in an uncertain place, we want you to know that you're not alone. Your feelings are real. Your voice matters. And it's okay to question. It's okay to push back and to ask more questions. You, as a parent, know and caregiver, parent and caregiver, who knows your child in a way that no chart or textbook ever could.
That's
And if
so
you're
true.
if you're a practitioner, listen to the family, hear the parent, talk to the child. They're not just part of a treatment plan, they are the story.
Well, you have to remember you are their advocate, their strength, and
Mhm.
you're doing better than you think. Because no
Absolutely.
one can take away your love or your voice. You have to keep trusting it and keep going on, because your story and your child's is still being written.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We want to thank you all for listening, truly listening to our stories today. It means more than you will ever know that you took the time to hear about Morgan and hear about Hallie. And we want you to know that wherever you are in your own story, we just hope that you feel a little less alone. You are your child's greatest strength, and you don't have to carry it all by yourself.
Like this episode?
Share it with a friend. Leave a little love in the comments. And don't forget to follow Strength Happens.
It means more to us than you know, and it may help someone else feel a little less alone.
Thank you for being part of our story.